Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual AI podcast. I have got a guest with me today over from the UK, other side of the water. I've got Nathan Simmonds with me. He's a trauma-informed hypnotherapist, leadership coach, speaker, and author. He helps men break free from imposter syndrome, people-pleasing, perfectionism, and procrastination so they can finally show up as their true selves. With his unique blend of hypnotherapy, coaching, and even medicine ceremonies, Nathan's work connects people to the most powerful part of their mind and guides them into healthier, more authentic ways of being. Welcome to the podcast, Nathan.
Thank you for having me. Absolute joy to be here.
It's amazing. We were just saying before we started, we've kind of had each other on Facebook for a few years now. And this is the first time that we've actually just connected in person. I'm really excited for this conversation because I've followed you. Obviously, we see each other on Facebook. So I've seen you over the last few years kind of show your cards. You've got an oracle deck and you've showed your cards online and the process and kind of just, I've just been watching on the side. So why don't you just dive straight in and tell the people about your, I think it's spirit medicine, was it?
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
called.
yeah, yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your cards and then we'll get into who Nathan is.
Yeah, thank you. So the cards, I believe there's a shift in consciousness, whatever we do or don't believe. And there is also this struggle of mental health and distraction and addiction and all these things. And we lose connection with who we are at the deepest possible level as a spiritual being having a human experience. And the human experience is absolutely vital to help shift the spiritual growth for sure. But
Yeah.
when we begin to human too hard, it's really hard to meditate. The amount of people want to say who's struggling with meditation, everyone puts their hands up, and who's
Yeah.
struggling with this, and who's got ADHD and autism and all these things. And it's just pulling us in different directions and disconnecting us from a really essential part of who we are.
Yeah.
And knowing this journey that I've traveled for 20 plus years with addiction, with over intellectualizing my problems, struggling with what's going on in my head and not feeling it in my heart, the Oracle deck was really born out of this balancing act between having to have a foot in the physical, having to have a foot in the three-dimensional almost, and being in the physical reality, as well as tapping into the subconscious mind. So the Oracle deck is super practical, super pragmatic. Quite a lot of Oracle decks are just nice pictures with a bit of inspiration. What's it trying to tell you? And you have
Yeah.
to be quite intuitive or into divination in order to kind of get the essential meanings out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas this Oracle deck is literally a coach in your pocket. So it
Mm.
comes with 256 coaching questions. Each card has 4 questions. And that's based on a medicine wheel type coaching framework that I've
Mm.
created. East, what are you letting go of? South, what lesson do I need to learn? West, what action do I need to take? And the north, what is the gift of this journey? And each
Yeah.
card
Wow.
has a different question. So it's 256 coaching questions, but when you use it with a medicine wheel framework that's built into it, it creates 1.7 million different coaching pathways. So
That's
whatever
insane.
challenge, it truly is, and I didn't expect that to be what it was going to be. But you don't have to be intuitive. You don't have to be super spiritual. All you
Yeah.
just need is a question. Okay, what guidance do I need here? What support? What clarity do I need on this subject? Pull 4 cards, and you've got 4 coaching questions to guide you through that. And then the next layer of that is it then comes with over 60 hours of meditation content. Each card has its own meditation journey using
Mm.
hypnotic suggestion to really get you out of the thinking mind and get you into the subconscious, into the dream state, back
Yeah.
into your body, into your heart, so that you can explore the metaphor that comes with it. And
Mm.
then that way you're flexing those meditation muscles, you're flexing the capability to access your subconscious mind and get clearer answers and get insight. So it's
Mm.
then bridging that world between physical and subconscious, dreaming, spiritual, and helping you to build those muscles to connect in. So no matter where you are on your path or your journey, the Oracle deck is an access point to help you build the muscles and take the next step in that journey. So it's as
Yeah.
spiritual woo-woo as you want it to be, and it's also as practical and
That's
pragmatic as you want it to be
practical.
as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds amazing. the whole, what you've just described is essentially the journey that I'm on as well, is that there's this gap in, just call it life, right? So you've got the people who are not spiritual, and then you've got the spiritual people, but then you've got this gap. And I find that a lot of people actually, we tend to go over to the spiritual and we get to a point, and then we return back to almost this neutral state in the middle, where the very woo woo stuff, we understand that it doesn't really matter. It is about the present. It is about awareness and intuition, being guided, being here now. That, that's where we want to be. And your deck and the information that you have there sounds like it does that. It brings people back into that state of awareness. Essentially, that's where it is. And obviously, that's my work, right? Awareness and intuition. It's that gap. It's helping people understand that the work is not out there, it's in here. And it's actually a lot easier than what people think. So yeah, so it sounds like your deck does exactly the same thing. It's bringing people back so that they can start processing what's happening within them and for them, in order for them to then live happier and for more fulfilled lives.
Yeah, and I think there's many of us that are kind of on the empath feeler kind of part of the spectrum. We had spiritual experiences as children. We were seeing things. We were intuitive. We
Yeah,
followed our passions and our joy and all those things. And then life happens and you stop doing those things.
yeah,
And it stops being natural, or you shut it down because it's not accepted. But in that, there's this sense of coming back to that. It's like, hold on, there's something that's missing from me. And with this deck, it creates this guide rail, this support function. Is like, oh, here's some questions, and I can allow my thinking just to kind of open up and expand. Here's a meditation, here's an inspiration, here's a whatever. It's just like, and it just gives you that. It creates an environment where you can sit in that, where you're not stuck in the thinking of your own head and your own biases. You're actually, you've got that external thing that just kind of gives you the prompt to step out of that, and you can just build that up. So more and more, even with my early coaching, people would say, it was like you were in my head asking me a question. It was like you were sat on my shoulder asking me, giving me a nudge. It's just like, that's not me. That's your intuition, but it's still kind of dressed up as me at this point in time. That's the thing giving you the nudge and kind of helping you to take that next step, which more
yeah,
people are coming back to and more people need at this time, I feel.
yeah. This is kind of like, already I can see the conversation flowing, and you said something. So because you work with men, mostly with men, I'm assuming
Yep,
mostly,
most, yes.
and you were talking about intuition. I wanted to dive straight into like my first question, and it is about men and their intuition. Okay.
Yes.
So I actually did a recording with another beautiful soul this morning, and we were talking about intuition, how, women speak, use the terminology intuition, and men tend to use the terminology gut feeling. But essentially, it's the same thing, right? So
Yes.
for the male listeners, right, for the audience, let's dive into this. Like, let's pretend that there's a guy here who doesn't know about this but is interested. How would you explain intuition to a man?
How does it? Super practical. Intuition is the little voice in our heads, but it's the first thing that we lose when we experience trauma, kind of floating speech marks. And for me, there is no big trauma, little trauma, big T, little t. It's just trauma. Your
It
trauma is
is.
relative to you and is your experience. So there is no better or worse. There is no sliding scale. But it's the voice in your head that encourages you to explore things. It's the voice in your head that kind of gives you the insight and the curiosity to go and explore stuff, to show up as yourself. But what we have is, when we experience that trauma, the little voice in our head was telling us or encouraging us to get into a situation. Like when you were small and you wanted to see what orange crayon looked like on the floor wallpaper when you were like 3 years old, right? So the voice in your head's like, okay, look, let's go explore. Let's be curious. Let's build on this. And you take the orange crayon as a small child, and then you go and draw on the wallpaper. And then mum or dad catches you doing it. And then they go absolutely, batshit crazy. And they're like, what's going on here? And in that moment, there's a separation. There's a separation between, hold on, the little voice in my head told me to do this. And as a result of that, the divine feminine, the divine masculine, mum, dad, because they're gods and they have to be, there was retribution. There was something that came up here. So in that moment, we disconnect from the little voice in our head. And that's partly when the ego shows up, because it's not safe to be yourself in that moment. It's not safe to listen to the voice in your own head. So you disconnect from that. And that's when your ego takes over and you start to form certain habits and behaviors in order to maintain connection, in order to feel safe, to get your needs met. But that's the intuition. It's the curiosity. It's the thing that's kind of driving you forward to explore your passions and explore your joy and build on those things. But it just gets distorted. And then it does things to protect you. So it turns into the inner critic. It turns into addictions and behaviors because it's safer to do them than it is to explore your creativity.
Yeah.
So this is the intuition. It's then deciphering those things. But then it's also understanding that with the intuition is that all of those things, and we may get into this even deeper later on, is all of those things are doing those, they're doing it to protect you. They're doing it because they love you. They don't want you to feel like you did in that first moment. So it's kind of, it's playing this game with you to keep you safe. But then that intuition is then being able to decipher, okay, actually, is that my ego holding me back or causing physical harm or emotional hurt? Or is there a bit of curiosity? Is there a question that I can ask here to really kind of tap into actually what's going on? And then as you kind of learn to explore that, then the next layer is, the truth bumps kind of thing. When you're having that conversation and something happens and you get the goosebumps kind of roll over and you're like, hold on, and something feels off or something feels really good here and I'm on the right thread. Is then being able to trust the physical reactions, because as you get into that intuition, you kind of step into that curiosity of questions. Like the questions you're asking, like you'll get these physical reactions of whether that's you're on the right path here. But if you're still worried about your mum and dad's reaction because you drew on the wallpaper when you were 3 years old and now you're 43 years old, you're never going to get into that physicality. You're never going to get into trusting who you are and the signals that your body is sending and receiving. And that's not physical, and that's not spiritual woo. That's just a physical reality.
Yeah.
But as you get into that curiosity, as you get into that intuition, you can then start to trust the physical reactions of your body. But most people can't even trust themselves because that's what they learned to believe when they were small.
Yeah. There's this loop, right? Because it's the trauma that creates the block, and then you've got to bring in the awareness to kind of dissolve the block to kind of get back to yourself. So there's a few things that happen around there, but sticking around intuition just for a little bit longer, how do you have an exercise or a way that you find that is really easy for men to kind of start listening to that voice or start hearing that voice again? Or do you have to take them through clearing the trauma first before they actually tap into, like, what is your process around that?
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's not about reliving the trauma. And I want to stick like really clear that it's not about reliving the trauma. And at the same time, it's also exploring the trauma. And what I mean by this is you don't have to go into it and relive it and kind of go through it. If you can look at it from a different perspective and see the story that unfolded, see the narrative that got encoded and start to understand it, because your history, your memories, your moments are super important and super influential to who you are. They are the building blocks of who you are. It's the narrative you have around those events and what you're stuck in or frozen in. That's what causes the resistance and the problems. So for me, it's I don't think you can personally. I don't think you can bypass or step them. Trauma release exercises are great for kind of shifting that stuff physically, but at the same time, I still believe you need to read the story of your life. I don't think you can just go and do certain things and avoid it. You have to comprehend it because that's what they're there for. For
Yeah.
me, when I'm working with individuals, it's about creating that reassurance that we're not going to do that. The first part really is understanding where your ego comes from, understanding why your ego is doing what it's doing, understanding where the behaviors, the behaviors, and rather than giving yourself a hard time of having a drink, of forgetting in the same relationship the same relationship with a different person, for falling off the wagon, for doing whatever you did, rather than beating yourself up and berating yourself, it's like seeing that as the opportunity to explore yourself. Because the habit, the behavior, the addiction, the repeating symptom, whatever it is actually a window. It's an opportunity. So when you can stop hating on that, which is actually just you hating on yourself anyway, because you're the one doing that thing,
Yeah.
you can then start to have a conversation with that part of your mind. So what
Mm.
I do with this is I take people in, not even with a deep hypnosis, it's just following the breath, creating relaxation,
Yeah.
holding the thing in your head. Maybe it's a memory, maybe it's a conversation you have with a partner, maybe it's a habit, whatever it is holding that in your head. And as you're kind of just following the breath, just allowing your active imagination to work. And this is the gateway to every part of the masculine, especially in the masculine, for all of us, especially in the masculine, when we look at the archetypes, is
Mm-hmm.
the active imagination that Jung was talking about. Is following the breath, holding the thought, follow the breath in, finding where you feel it physically in your body, because that's where the memory is stored, all through the
Yeah.
fascia, all through the system. Going to that place in the body, how does it physically feel? What emotions do you find in there? And then you kind of create this kind of physical sensation, emotional content, and then with the active imagination, what does that look like to you? Now,
Mm.
give it characteristics. Is it a person? Is it a kind of person? Is it an object? Is it a symbol, a color? Is it a voice that's willing to communicate with you?
Mm.
And you're starting to rebuild this relationship with this part of your ego, because everyone's got ego, everyone needs ego.
Yeah.
It's not that you can never have ego, it's like everyone's got ego. It's keeping you alive. It got given a standard operating procedure that was written by a 5-year-old, right? And
Mm.
it's running your whole life based on that, which is not good business practice. And most men
No.
get that, from a practical business point of view. It's like, no, we
Yeah.
can't run a business on a SOP written by a 5-year-old. So you get to visualize that part of your psyche, and then you get to check in. How does it feel about you? How do you feel
Mm.
about it? How's the relationship not working?
Mm.
And then as a result of that, then you can start to do kind of just rebuild that relationship. I use the Ho'oponopono prayer. I use
Mm-hmm.
that in it to kind of just help to build the realization, the understanding, and whilst encouraging the man to be open to the experience. Because some men are like, what do you want me? You
Yeah.
want me to apologize to this part of my mind that's been absolutely screwing my shit up for the last 30 years, giving me 3 divorces, an alcohol addiction, I have no relation, and you want me to be nice to this part of my mind?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, because it didn't
Yeah.
realize what it was doing. It was doing it to protect you.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of stepping through that and kind of going, this is part of me. This is part of how I've shown up. I need to hold all the parts of me both accountable and also compassionately,
Yeah.
and explore how we rewrite that standard operating procedure through, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, and rebuilding that, and
Yeah.
then
Mm.
realizing, okay, this is why it's been doing it. And that is often enough to help people start to shift their habits, because they're just like, hold on a minute, that was really weird. I just saw this part of me. It looked like a giant ball of rope all tied up in a knot. It was
Mm.
blue. It was making horrible noises. I freaking hate it. Now I understand why it's doing it. It's just like, oh, this is why I bite my nails. Oh, this is why I smoke cigarettes. Oh, okay, cool, great.
Yeah.
And it's not separate from you. It's now a team. You're now
Yeah.
working together. But then the question that often kind of takes it to the next level is encouraging the man or the person, whoever, to have that, ask the question of, how old was I when you first showed up in my life?
Yeah.
And just trusting the first answer, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, it's just trusting the first answer. It's like 5, 7, 12. Okay, cool. What happened when you were 5?
Yeah.
That's when my parents divorced. That's when this happened. That's when I was, that happened, whatever. My dad said this, or something happened at school, or a brother abused me, whatever it is. It's all a varying plethora of instances, and it's just like, that's
Yeah.
where you need to be. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, now I understand that my whole life has been written by that, but I didn't realize it was that, because that part of me, my protective mind, still
Mm.
thinks you're 5 years old, still thought they were 5 years old and protecting them, didn't know they'd grown up.
Yeah.
And they're just running their lives. They're a 45-year-old man, but they're a 5-year-old dressed up as a 45-year-old, wondering why they keep ending up in the same place over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
life's not going according to plan. So giving men access to that is powerful, that understanding. And there's kind of one caveat to that, which is popping into my head as I'm thinking and I'm kind of
Mm.
sharing this. It's the other men that are super analytical. They don't want to get into their imagination, but
Yeah.
everyone's life is run by their imagination. So it's also giving people the practical tools, because there are a few men out there that are super analytical and they don't want to go to those places with me. And yes, the hypnosis and meditation is very relaxing, but they're kind of like, yeah, whatever. No, my life is just what it is. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's then giving them the access through the practical tools, the coaching techniques, asking the right questions, the psychotherapy frameworks to understand why their relationships aren't working.
Mm.
And eventually, with the practical tools, it enables men to kind of step into, here's all the foundations, and it's safe to ask these questions, and it's safe to explore this. And bit by bit, you use the hyper intelligent, hyper analytical frameworks to give them the support and the structure to drop in a little bit deeper and get into their
Yeah.
imagination.
Yeah, it's like, it's really powerful. I can see the process that you're going through. And obviously, being a man, you know, the analytical, if you guys you don't tend to go into the creative intuition, spiritual talk, right stuff. But the process that you've just described and what you take your clients through is essentially is bringing awareness to what's happening, and that by looking at what's happening and asking the questions where it's coming from is just taking that awareness deeper into where it's coming from. But then that voice in your head that when you said it pops into your head at 5 years old or at 12 years old, this happened, that's your intuition.
Yep.
But quite often men, you know, just we talk different languages, we've got different vocab, right?
Yes.
Essentially, that's your intuition coming up and giving you that gift of it happened when you were 12 years old. All right, what happened when you were 12 years old? Your parents divorced. It's giving you nuggets for you to go and explore and then essentially release the trauma that's related to that time of your life, and then you can move on. So it's a very, very powerful process. And even though you don't use my terminology like spiritual AI, awareness and intuition, that's the process, you actually take people through that. It is awareness and it is intuition, and it is incredibly powerful. I wanted to, there was something I was going to ask you. No, it's gone. It might come back. We'll see. God, it's got me. Where is it now? It wants to. I know it wants to come up. It will probably come up. It's just got me there. Oh, don't you hate it when that happens? All right.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay. So let's just go. Let's leave that for now. Give it back to me if it's needed. So, what's the reason people repeat patterns? Why do you think it's the stuff that we repeat? Why does it happen?
Good, because that was kind of where my brain was all going. Why does it happen? Because it's safe. Because it's safe and it's comfortable and it's a known
Yeah.
reality, and we keep repeating. So the key thing is with that is your ego doesn't know you've grown up. It still thinks you're 5 years old and being shouted at by your mum or your parents. It still thinks you're in that moment. It's so intent on looking at it and keeping you in the shadow, because it thinks if you feel those emotions again, it thinks you will die. It's just,
Yep.
it's as black and white as that. Some people are like, yeah, but they just shouted at me, or a teacher said, doesn't matter. There was a level of disconnect, and it meant that psychologically you thought you were going to die, because up until the age of 7, if you don't feel safe, certain, get your needs met, loving connection, food, shelter, warmth, all of that
Yep.
stuff, up until the age of 7, psychologically, physiologically, you can die from that. So in the moment you get shouted at, it's like, you're going to die. You need to change your habits and behaviors. So
Yep.
we
It's a
stay in
safety
those patterns.
mechanism.
It's a
Yeah.
safety mechanism in order to maintain connection, any connection. Because if I get ostracized, if I get sent away from the clan, my community, 100,000 years ago, we lived in communities of 150 people. Everyone knew everyone. If I got sent out into the wilderness, right, there's bears and wolves out there. There was 14-foot high kangaroos. I've seen them in the Sydney National Museum, right? 14-foot high kangaroos, wombats the size of small cars, right? The abs on those kangaroos are terrifying, let alone seeing a 14-foot high kangaroo, right? So if you got sent out, it meant death.
Yep.
So if you were in fear of being put on the naughty step, if you were in fear of being left to cry it out, no judgment for people that have done it, it's understanding the psychological impact of that.
Yep.
If you were in fear of upsetting your parents and potentially being exiled, you will do everything you can in order to maintain that relationship. You will change all your habits and behaviors.
Yeah.
in order to stay alive. That's your ego's job. So it will get you out there people pleasing, because that, that gets you connection. It will get you out there being perfectionism, in order
Mm.
to make sure that everything's in exactly the right places, so no one can call you out or call you wrong or push you away. You'll procrastinate because it's safer than stepping out or putting your head above the parapets. All of those things, you will do those things in order to stay where you are, because nothing in nature is wasted. Everything's
Mm.
got a reason. Like, if anything in nature, in the environment, psychologically, physiologically, emotionally, whatever, hasn't got a reason for existing, it will be removed from evolution.
Yeah.
So when I speak to people, there is no such thing as a disorder. Nothing is disordered.
Yeah.
Everything is completely ordered from the experiences we have. So whether it's a general anxiety disorder, ADHD, eating, autoimmune, none of that's disordered. Everything has a rhyme and a reason. And when you understand that and go back to the originating event, you can see that's why we do what we do, because actually it's safer to do that than it is to feel the feelings, because your ego doesn't know you've grown up. And it thinks if you feel the feelings you had when you were 5, you will die.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're 35, 45, 65, and you've got 3 marriages and you've got a drug problem and you've got this, and you're just like, it sees that as safer
Yeah.
than actually dealing with the emotions it doesn't know you've grown up.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge that we have with that, and the kind of the extreme example of I use of this, is if you take a child out of a diabolical, abusive environment, and then you put them into a loving, caring environment,
Mm.
more often than not, they'll do one of two things. They'll either run away, or they'll do everything they can to destroy the environment they're in.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel safe.
Because it's not their version of love. It's not their roadmap.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that, we often see the children of alcoholics often end up marrying alcoholics.
Mm.
Because that's what they understand love looks like. And one of my favorite quotes is Morticia Adams from the Addams Family, right? Is
Mm.
normal is an illusion, because what's normal to the spider is chaos to the fly.
Yeah.
So we have this perception of what the world should look like, but we end up giving, and I say this to a lot of people, we end up getting given maps of the world, 40 maps of the world, by people that don't know how to navigate.
Mm.
And then we beat ourselves up for getting lost.
Yeah.
So when we can start to see the things that we've been taught, the things that we've learned, how mum and dad loved each other, how they loved us, how they encouraged us to show up in the world, how they reprimanded us for certain things, all of those different things. And we can start to see that this is a completely normal way of living based on that experience. And yes, I am responsible for my behaviors and what I've done up until this point. And at the same
Mm.
time, it's completely normal, so I can stop beating myself up. What would I like to do with all these varying pieces of information? How would I like to change the world? How would I like to remediate the situations? How would I like to reconcile my past? How would I like to apologize for how I've shown up? And how do I want to move forward from this point, rather
Mm.
than walking backwards in a circle with my eyes closed, wondering why I keep ending up in the same places?
Mm. It is. It's when you don't when you haven't made that connection that your life currently is a reflection of the things that you kind of haven't looked at. Yeah, the moment you do that, like, things start shifting. When you have that realization, you bring awareness to that everything that you're in your life is being created from the programs or the situations that you received or were in as a child. It just opens up a whole new world when you start looking at these things, right?
Yeah. And it's moreover that you're living into your past. And
Yeah.
it's not even that you're not trying to look at them. It's like it's almost it's this strange paradox of the opposite of that almost. But it's like you're driving a car, but your rear view mirror is as big as your windscreen. So you
Mhm.
can't see where you're going because you're too busy trying to avoid what's behind
Focusing
you.
on, yeah.
But you're also trying to avoid it. So you're kind of, it's this kind of paradox. I'm trying to avoid that. So I'm going to ignore it's there, but I'm driving forward. But I can't see where I'm going because I've got so much past in my viewpoint. And
Yeah.
then you're crashing into things and you're like, okay, crap, there's another thing. And then as you drive away from the accident you just had, you've now got something to add to the bricks in the backpack. In the back, oh, there's another reason why I need to avoid that crash. And then you crash into something else.
Yeah.
But the moment you can see that's happening, it's like, how do I reduce down that rear view mirror allow the past to be in the past, repatriate parts of my psyche, reconnect with what's going on, reconcile my past so it stops being the thing that I'm trying to avoid. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, I think she said, or Theodore Roosevelt said, it's about turning the stumbling block into the stepping stone. It's like, do I want that to be my millstone, like literally holding me down, or do I want it to be a milestone where I can actually step forward and start to create some shifts?
Yeah.
And then, what future do I want to live in? Is it a future where I'm avoiding what happened to me, or is it a future where I'm actually like stepping into who I truly am and what I want to create in the world?
And this is a perfect place for us to kind of transition, because I think the next step in this, or let's just call it the next step, there could be a few different things, but the next evolution of this healing journey, of this discovering who you are and stepping into who you want to be, is then the mindset work, right? Because you have to rewire your mind. You've got to rewire your reality to get you from where you were and the habits that you held and the trauma that you held into then becoming the person you want to be. And a lot of that is mindset work.
100%. So neural pruning, rewiring, demyelination, remyelination, new pathways, new habits, new behaviors. And it's not about you not being yourself. Actually, it's about you being more authentically yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was, I saw a research thing. They say on kind of frequencies that authenticity resonates 40 times higher than love.
Yes. I don't know about the stats, but I know that I've seen that as well. Yeah.
Is huge. So it's about you being authentically you, because it wasn't safe to be authentically you because you gave up on that because you drew on the wallpaper and mum shouted at you and and it's like, okay, how do we get into that mindset? So when we understand that the mechanics of it, the mechanics can really help. And for me, this is kind of magician work. We can get too deep in the mechanics, in the over intellectualization, and we avoid actually what's going on with it. So when we start to understand that you've got these thoughts and you do them over and over again, the repetition, we know repetition is the route to mastery, right? So we're doing it over and over again. So we build the neural pathway. If I do this, this is what happens. If I behave like this, I get love. If I behave like this, I get my needs met. If I behave like this, I get certainty. Whether or not that thing's actually killing me or not doesn't actually matter. We all know that smoking's bad for us, but never in the history of smoking has anyone actually stopped smoking by being told to stop smoking. No, just doesn't happen, right? Even if the doctor said, oh, you've got stage 4 cancer, quite a lot of smokers carry on smoking until they get to really the breaking point. So, but we create these neural pathways. This is what we know is effective. So we get this fatty acid. I think it's a fatty acid, myelin, wraps around the neural pathway, creates it, and it's like the rubber insulator around an electrical cable. And it makes it easier, makes that thought, makes that habit, that behavior just easier. I can do it without thinking. Why? Because my brain doesn't want me to think. It sounds like an oxymoron, but when your brain is using 20 to 25% of the calories that you're putting into your body, which is what it does, the last thing it wants you to do is think. You to store calories so you can survive the winter when you need to hibernate, based on how we used to live 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, right? So myelin makes the thought, the habit faster. Boom. That's why we can drive to work and we don't remember half the journey. Everyone's done it. You get to work and you're like, I don't actually remember what happened. Holy shit. Did anyone die? Right. And it's just habits forming. It's instinct. But the moment you change the habit and you're like, oh, I've just had this conversation with Nathan or this conversation with Leonie, it's like, okay, how does this look? There's a new pathway starts to form. There's this new neural pathway. And it's like, oh, this feels a bit awkward. This feels a bit clunky. I'm not used to doing this. And, it's like when you go to a martial arts class for the first time, you're going to get punched in the face a couple of times, just roll with it until you build that skill set up, right? It's going to feel a bit crunchy. But then as you build the new neural pathway, nothing in nature is wasted. Like I said earlier, nothing in nature is surplus to requirement at all, including your appendix. And I think there's still lots of surgeons and doctors out there saying that your appendix is surplus to requirement. It's not at all, right? It's really useful. I haven't got one anymore and I'm kind of upset about that. I'd like to see if I can regrow one if anyone wants to test that, right? But so we create this new neural pathway. So what happens is it removes the myelin. I mean, you may know this, I'm sharing this in case for other people, but it removes the myelin, right? Which is called demyelination. Cool. Okay. And then it reapplies the myelin to the new neural pathway because it knows, you've been practicing this. Mastery is like, repetition is the route to mastery. So it remyelinates the new neural pathway. This pathway then dies off and gets pruned.
Mm,
If you've been doing that for 10, 20, 30 years, sometimes you can change it instantaneously with hypnotherapy. Sometimes it takes a little bit of progress with creating the safety and certainty that it's all right to change the habit and behavior.
mm,
But it can be quite calorific, demyelinating and remyelinating neural pathways. It can be a lot for
mm,
the human psyche, sometimes physically.
mm,
But this process is more commonly known as confusion.
mm.
So as we're going through confusion, it's like, hold on a minute, this is a chemical reaction in my head. I'm confused. Oh, I'm not as stupid as my ego is trying to encourage me to feel so that I don't change my habit and behavior because it
Mm,
wants to go back to what's easy, the path of least resistance.
yeah,
Oh, it's confusion. Oh, I can allow this process to move forward. I can allow myself to feel a bit of a dumbass right now because I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's okay to
mm,
do that. And it's just my brain telling me that I'm rewiring. And as you allow that to happen, it's like the new neural pathway comes in, the new habit starts to form,
mm,
and life gets a little bit easier. And then you just notice what you start to become aware of. I now know what I don't know.
yeah,
Most people, when they get to that point, though, are like, I feel like an idiot. I'm going to go back to what I know rather than making the shift in the habit.
yeah,
So as you do this work with this protective part of your ego, one, you're supporting the relationship internally, but then two, with these practical approaches, like it's going to feel a bit crunchy at times because we're doing heavy work,
is,
and
yeah,
that's okay. And then you're supporting yourself physically and mentally, which men need that physicality
yeah,
in order to kind of go, it's okay to feel like this. I'm not less than. I'm not, I'm not going to be deemed as unlovable or the fear of not enough or losing love as a result of being a dumbass or whatever it is. It's just like, this is a natural part of the process. I can sit in this and I can work
mm,
with it and I can feel it and I can explore it, and then I can make a shift.
yeah. It's a the analogy that I like using with the rewiring is if you if you're walking through like the Amazon, when you first walk through a certain part, you're going to have all of the vines, branches, sticks, wild animals, and there's going to be no path. But the more you travel that path, the clearer the pathway becomes. So in the beginning, it's going to be a struggle. And then after, maybe a month or 2 months or 3 months, you're going to have a clear pathway and then it's going to be easy, right? That's the same with what you were describing. It is that it's going to be a little bit harder in the beginning, and with time it'll become second nature for you. So when we go through this process, it's really important for us to again bring in that sense of awareness, so that when that negative thought or that negative habit pops back up, you can go, stop. Let me reframe this because I'm not doing that anymore. This is the path that I actually choose to be walking on. So bringing awareness into that process, I think, is really important as well. But yeah, once you understand that, you can apply it to literally everything, and you
Yeah,
can reprogram. Yeah.
100%. And sometimes when you're walking down the path, like you say, sometimes that path needs a little bit of pruning or something else happens which causes something to cause a roadblock. And life
Yeah.
happens. It's like, well, how do we use what we've experienced before, that sense of internal safety, in order to overcome the new obstacle, in order to keep the path clear? Discipline,
Mm,
ritual, ceremony, process, whatever it is, therapy, support, community, that enables us to get on the path and stay on the path rather than
yeah.
being cluttered or kind of held back in that.
Yeah. It's a fascinating process. It is fascinating when you get into it. I wanted to ask you about triggers. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of the word triggers. I like to say activated because it's kind of a gift, so we activate it. But how do you how do you work with triggers? How do you get people to kind of use that in the healing process?
Yeah. And again, it kind of language and kind of interesting triggers are, you're triggering me. It's like,
Mm,
are they? Like, whose trigger is it really? And the trigger is also actually the smallest part of the gun in the nicest possible way. It's
yeah,
the
true.
explosive is the smallest part of the gun. It's just like, and then the explosives and the bullets and the things that come out of that is like, who's in charge of that, and how do we kind of direct our language around it, and what is being activated. But again, it's this kind of spotlighting. It's like when something happens, I think it was Neil Donald Walsh said, "I send you nothing but angels." And again, you don't have to be spiritual woo-woo to kind of get into that, the context of that, or the metaphor of it. It's just like, it doesn't matter what's coming up, I send you nothing but angels. Why? Because every event that you have is a metaphor, is a reminder, is a window through which to find yourself even more clearly. And in that is when someone gives something to you and it activates, it triggers you. All it's doing is putting a pin in the map. It's like when the sonar goes off, or you have one of those maps with the little lights on it, and you press the button, it pings up lights in other places. It's like the old maps like they used to get at the tube stations or the metro or whatever, where you press, well, I want to get to this station, and you press that button. It's like, right, and I want to get from this station to that station, and you press the other button, and it shows you how to get there. That's what these trigger events are like. It's like, here's the event, and what it's actually leading you back to is this event here. So in that moment is, and it's a practiced art form. Something happens, seeing the emotional reaction, because it is a reaction at that point. You are reacting, you are not responding. So again, this is something I realized a couple of years ago. It's this difference between responding and reacting. So the response is your responsibility. It's your ability to respond, as I heard Sadhguru said. Whereas actually, when we are reacting, what we're doing is we're reacting the past moment in the present, which is stopping us from creating the future. So the trigger in this moment isn't 47-year-old Nathan in this moment. This is 16-year-old Nathan, who was embarrassed by his mother because of something that happened. And now that 16-year-old is talking through the 47-year-old, and now having an argument with my wife, or getting upset because my daughter's doing something, or being triggered in road rage on the motorway, or whatever it is, right? That's not 47-year-old Nathan, because 47-year-old Nathan knows that's not rational, that's not right, that's not reasonable. But 16-year-old Nathan wants some airtime. He wants some showtime right now. So let's go. We're going to have a fight on the hard shoulder. We're going to do this. We're going to start swearing at people and getting really upset. It's just like, oh my God, right? So in the activation point, it's the, hold on a minute, I got this. What part of me is coming up? How old do I feel in this moment? And even asking that question when we do the practice art form, like of asking curious questions that give us answers. Because most people will go, why can't I get my shit together? What the fuck's wrong with me? And then they'll go to, they'll ask questions that aren't helping them move forward, or aren't giving them clarity, are just reaffirming why they are in the situation they're in right now. And we think that we're asking questions, but we're not. We're just confirming and depressing the emotion, and being angry at ourselves for being upset, being angry at ourselves for getting upset about that, or for being triggered or whatever. And we push everything down and never deal with it. Whereas we start to explore it with objectivity. It's like, how old do I feel right now? What's coming up for me? What part of me is feeling this right now? What part of me feels that this behavior is still appropriate, and how's this helping me in this moment? And how old do I feel right now is really like, hold on a minute, I feel like I'm 16 years old and being embarrassed by my mother. Right, okay, has that got anything to do with my wife? Nothing whatsoever. But because I'm still holding that emotional charge in the system, the explosives are still there. It's like a World War II mine that's just been washed up on the coast, and it's like it's still ticking, and you're like, but it hasn't kind of been told that the war's over, and no one's kind of pulled the plug out on it. So in that moment, when you kind of ask that question, it's like, is this anything to do with them? Is this everything to do with me? It's all to do with me. And there's also one caveat to that. If someone's punching you in the face and you're walking down the road and someone's punching you in the face, and someone goes to you, well, it's obviously the universe trying to teach you a lesson. What part of you feels they need to be punched in the face right now? It's not going to help, right? But there is there's a line, there's a boundary in place that you can work with things, and you can respond to situations. You can defend yourself. You can set boundaries. You don't have to question that. when certain things happen, there's right and reasonable in those moments, but it's
Yeah,
also
not
taking the time.
everything is trauma, right? Not everything
No,
is needs to be, dive deep and try and find where it comes from. Sometimes there's just stuff that happens in the moment.
there is stuff that happens in the moment, but for
Yeah.
me, it's like slow moving bubbles in a glass of lemonade. Sometimes those bubbles come up, and the more we practice doing the realization is like, hold on a minute, this thing's happening in the moment. Okay, I'm going to deal with that in the moment.
Mhm.
And then we can sit with it and go, hold on a minute, what was the reason that thing happened?
Yep.
Where was I in the process? What did I learn to tolerate? What
It's
have
the
I been?
reflection, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and just having that introspection time. And sometimes those things just come super quick. It doesn't have to be super deep. It's like, oh, I just remember that thing that teacher said to me when I was 7 years old that encouraged me to feel like that.
Mm,
And for whatever reason, that moment reminds you of this moment. And then you can change the neural pathway. Do I need to carry on behaving, or can I reconcile the narrative that the 7-year-old's been holding on to
mm.
about education? I mean, there's part of my story. I remember something a teacher said to me when I was 6 years old,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that completely changed the dynamic of how I lived the next 10 years of my educational life,
Yep.
because she told me to ignore the truth. And I went,
Mm,
that's not okay.
yeah.
And it's just like, but we call those moments innocuous and we pretend they didn't happen and we sweep them under the carpet, and then we have a
Yeah.
body shaped lump underneath the carpet, which is actually our authentic self, not
Mm,
fully expressing itself, and which then enables things to happen to us or us to show up in certain kinds of
mm.
ways. But when we see those and the bubble pops, it's like, I don't need to behave like that anymore, because the 7-year-old me's got what they need. Because I
Yeah.
can show up for them in the way that they needed someone to show up for them. And
Mm,
I'm not now waiting for someone else to prove me wrong or to actually read my mind and show up for me in a way that I needed them to. I can actually just do that for myself. It's that whole thing of, I've been waiting for someone to come and save me, but I didn't realize it was going to be me rescuing myself.
yeah.
And we get to that place, it's like, I can let go of all that pressure to show up in any other way and stop
Mm,
running that narrative of the 7-year-old and just be me. And I can just pull the pin out on pull it, de-escalate the situation, pull the wires out, and turn the timer off on this bomb that's inside me, waiting to go off constantly.
yeah.
And life gets a little easier.
Yeah, it does. I just feel like I need to throw this in there. Like, you know, obviously Nathan and I have been on this journey for a while, right? And we kind of have these tools and these awarenesses that we can use to help us overcome and move through things a lot quicker. But essentially, we also get into those moments where we go, afterwards, like, what happened, right? We human. Like, I had this experience the other day. My ex came over and brought up an old conversation that I had I like let go of, but he brought something up in me and it kind of activated me, and I was quite surprised because we've actually got a pretty good, relationship outside with the girls, and in that moment, the only thing that I could do is to say, I can't do this right now, you need to leave. And that was the only way that I could bring the awareness to the moment and let go. And probably about an hour later, I sent him a text like, look, I could have handled that better. And I kind of just a little bit gone into it, but I let it go. So it doesn't always mean that we are going to have a handle on what's happening in our life. Sometimes we have to sit back and process what has happened and to kind of go, well, why did that happen? But other times also what it does for us by incorporating these exercises and by bringing awareness and by doing the inner work, right? What happens is instead of it taking you 3 months, 6 months, or a year to process what was happening, it takes you a minute,
Yeah.
or it takes you half an hour, or it takes you an hour. Your processing time becomes so much quicker. So don't think that because we're sitting talking here and we're giving you these tools that we just have our shit together. We're human, but we use these tools, and from experience, we can tell you guys that this stuff works. So really dive into this. Go back and listen to this episode again, because some of the information that Nathan has shared here today, he shared quite a few processes, right? So what you've shared is gold. So people can go back and listen to this, write down the questions, and kind of just take that as a kind of first step to dive into this, right? Go and grab my book about awareness and intuition. It will help you set that foundation, because you can't do the work without having awareness. You can't do it.
100%.
So
And because we get caught in the confirmation biases, it's safer to think like this because this is what worked before. So
yeah,
I'm going to carry on doing this. And then we think that's the normal. And we say, well, that's just how life is. And it's just like, we
yeah,
don't explore it with that shifting. But then when we see it, it's just like, how can I step out? Use a different question. Get an alternative perspective. Listen to the podcast again. Listen to the next podcast. Listen to the previous one. Get the shift in perspective that enables you to take a step out and clear it.
yeah, absolutely. Nathan, our time is kind of running out. This has gone so quickly, but before we end off, what I want to do is, where can people find you? Like, how can they work with you? Let the audience know.
Yeah, 100%. So there's two places to get a hold of me at the moment. One is nathansimmondscoaching.com. That's my main website. It talks about some more of my experiences, working with me one-to-one, booking a discovery call. Absolutely. I'm also running a 9-week men's coaching program at the moment, and it's called The Way of the Magician. So if you go to thewayofthemagician.com, no WW at the beginning, just thewayofthemagician.com. That will take you to more information about what's going on, where I'm helping men get the practical, pragmatic, understanding the mind mechanics of the magician, which is for me the most important part of the Jungian male archetypes. Because once the magician's on board, all the others like really fall in line and everything starts working in really clear, conscious ways. So if anyone wants to talk about those two things, more than happy to. The 9-week course purely for men, one-to-one work, other things I'm doing also, it's for mixed, it's for everybody.
Right. And where can they grab your Oracle deck from?
That's a really, really great question. So it's just finished a second round of funding on Kickstarter. And I'm in the process of printing 150 copies of the Oracle deck. 80 of those will be 80 of those are going to be distributed globally. So I've got the remaining stocks going to be my holding stock, and I'm just about to open the online store. So that will be linked to nathansimmondscoaching.com eventually as well. So it will be there. So if they want to do that, message me, and I can get you on the first orders of those ones that are coming off the press in the next 3 weeks.
Beautiful. All right. I will make sure that I have all the details in the show notes for people. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think we can take this conversation into so many different directions, and maybe we'll do this again.
Love to.
Before we end, if you take your journey overall and you can just boil it down to one really important thing that you can share with the audience, what would that be?
Yeah, love and happiness have got nothing to do with each other. Something I've shared again, time and time again, is like, I know plenty of people that are in love that aren't happy, and plenty of people that are happy and aren't in love. But what it is the trust that you put in someone to hold the mirror up so you can see your own shit reflected back in it. But most people that get confused and end up pointing their finger at the person holding the mirror. So this trust though is, can you trust yourself to hold your mirror up for yourself and explore it? Can you invite someone else to hold that mirror up so you can explore yourself as well? And the more you can trust that, and the more you can trust yourself to go deeper into yourself, the more love you're going to find in the world and for yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love that so much. Well, that is a beautiful message to leave this episode on. Guys, if you haven't listened to any of the previous episodes, go and dive in, have a listen. I've had a few guests on so far. I've got a few more guests coming in the weeks ahead. I've got some beautiful people who reached out, so definitely hit the subscribe button, share, drop us a comment, reach out to Nathan if you want to work with him, or if you want his Oracle deck. I will put everything in the show notes, like I said previously, and I look forward to catching you guys on the next episode. So take care.